In this hands-on tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can monitor your dbt data and detect data quality issues with an interface like this, or this, or this. What I'm going to do in this tutorial is first, I'm going to show you the example project that I have set up and the typical problems that you have with monitoring dbt jobs. Then we're going to look into how to actually solve these problems with Elementary. Then I'm going to show you the setup that you have to do on the Snowflake side and on the dbt side to make this work. We're going to monitor jobs through the interface of Elementary Cloud. Then I'm going to give you my summary and verdict about this solution. I created jump marks for you below, so if you want to jump in one of these topics directly, use those. So let's get into it. Let's look into the example project that I have set up. What I have set up is in the middle you have here Snowflake with our data in our data schemas, and on the left here is our dbt where we have our dbt models and where we defined our dbt tests. Now what we do is we run our dbt job or run our models, and what happens is Snowflake is then going to do these transformations that we have defined in our dbt models and going to create the tables and the views and so on here. From the right side, we have our visualization where our data analysts sit here and they use Tableau and actually then access our data in our Snowflake, visualize it, or to create reports. How this looks in Elementary is this. You have an interface with a dashboard where you see all your healths and where you can see statistics. Then you can see the test results that you have run. You can look at results from runs of dbt. You can manage your tests. So if you have like me column tests created, you can see them. You can look at the model runs and find out how long are my tests running and what's the trend on the execution time. You have a data catalog where you can look at each of the models and see the columns that you use. And also a data lineage feature where you can identify end-to-end what is the impact of the problem that I have. So for this tutorial, I used the project from my dbt for data engineers course. How this is set up is basically we have a database called testdb, and in there is a schema called e-commerce that has the tables countries and the table data. And in the data table here, let's preview some data. This is basically invoices. These are stock codes, items, and with items description, quantity and dates and so on. So that's the basic idea. And then I have created dbt models, and these models are then going to create the new data. So let's quickly look at dbt. In dbt, how I set this up is when we go here into projects and look at the lineage, let me zoom in here. We have the two base tables with data. We have the countries, which is a seed file, and we have our e-commerce raw data table where there's all the data in. And then from there with dbt, we create items, we create invoices, and then data marts here. This is one white table, and this is a RFM analysis. That's basically everything from the transformation side. Two data sources, and then these models here. So what is the problem here with dbt? Now, when you're in dbt and now we have our jobs and these jobs are running, how can you monitor this? You can monitor this here that you have your jobs or you have the run history. Depending on how much you are actually doing, this run history will be very large, right? So it's difficult to actually find out what's going on. So, okay, you could say, let's click into our CI/CD job and then let's look at a run, click on the run, then we see, okay, git invoke, dbt test, and then we can find out here, okay, now this test here failed. Failure in tests, unique invoices, invoice number. It's a lot of clicking around in the dbt user interface, and the information that you are getting is very limited. You're getting the errors, but you don't get any statistics like run times in nice graphs or dashboards with overviews. And that's what we're going to solve here with Elementary. Elementary, which is also the sponsor of this video, is a dbt native data observability tool. They have a open source version and they also have a cloud version. And we're going to look at the cloud version today. With it, you can easily get the information from your dbt jobs and then visualize it and analyze it on a user interface. So how does this work? How Elementary works is you have a Elementary dbt package here on the left. And what this does is whenever you run a job, it's going to create the metrics and the results of this job and then stores that monitoring data here into a separate Elementary schema on your Snowflake. That allows you to keep your private data here private, and the Elementary user interface here on the right that has only access to the data of the schema. So this way you have a flow of the monitoring data into a private repository on your Snowflake. And that's literally everything that it does. You don't have to create your tests separately for Elementary because Elementary, dbt native, it's going to automatically use the dbt tests that you have defined in your models. Elementary is also going to automatically run additional tests like anomaly detection, and it's going to look for schema changes. So what do you need to do in Snowflake? In Snowflake, here I have my test DB, right? With the e-commerce data where the tables are in. Now what we need to do first, we need to select your test DB and add ourselves a schema. Call this schema Elementary. Once we have our schema Elementary, we need to create users and we need to create a user role for the Elementary access, right? That Elementary can access the data of our monitoring. What you do is you go here, go into admin and then go into user roles. And in user roles, click on roles and create here a role, call this Elementary, and then click create role. I already created this here. Oh, then you create a user, same thing, call this user. I called this user here Elementary _USR, enter this here and then give it a password. And don't force the user to change the password because this is the user for Elementary. Also, don't forget to give this user the roles. So go advanced options, scroll down, default role and select Elementary, and default warehouse, use your warehouse, small warehouse, and then create user. We now need to give Elementary rights to actually use our new schema. I created a worksheet for this and I'm going to put this on my GitHub so you can use these commands here. First, I granted the users for the small warehouse to the role Elementary. Then I granted the usage of my test DB to Elementary, and then usage on the schema Elementary to the role Elementary. And then I granted here the selects on future for every table that is going to be created in our schema Elementary. And depending, sometimes for me it didn't quite work out. I also then manually used here grant select on all tables and views in the schema. So if there are already tables, you can then actually access them with the Elementary user. And that is everything. That means your Elementary user doesn't have access to the data. So when we go back here and we, for instance, click here on the e-commerce, you see the roles here and the privileges, and there is no Elementary in here, right? So Elementary doesn't have access to your data. It also doesn't have access to this dimensions schema. This is where the dbt jobs right in here. Also, there is no Elementary in this. Elementary has nothing to do with this. It only has access to the tables that are getting created from Elementary. That's the setup of Snowflake. Now we need to modify our dbt project. Well, let's quickly get into the dbt project. In dbt, we need to make 2 changes and a few commands in the CLI. So first, you need to configure here Elementary data Elementary, and then the version 0.12 is the current one. That's half of the thing. Then you need to go into dbt project, and here you need to then define where the actual monitoring data is going to get stored. So you need to add this part here. elementary, and then schema elementary. That's it. The rest here is comments. And from this on, now your project is actually configured. Now you need to install the DBT library or the package that we defined here. You need to define the elementary data package. You just go onto the command line and do a dbt dips and then do a dbt run with select elementary so that it only runs this. With that, what it then does, it actually then creates the tables in Snowflake. So from this point on, when you have done the dbt run, you see the tables in Snowflake. Let's quickly look at the tables. So now this is our elementary here, and these are our tables. Data monitoring, metrics, dbt columns, exposures, and so on and so on. There are also a bunch of views in there, alerts, schema changes, alerts, dbt tests, and so on, chop, run results. So these are all going to be filled with data. For instance, when we go to dbt run results, this will then show us here the results. Unique ID, invocation, created at, and so on, status, execution time, started at, and so on and so on and so on. So with that, every time we run dbt, we actually then see the data. When you do a dbt run, it's going to see more models here, right? It's going to see 35 models because these models are also the models from elementary. And then it's going to also do more work here. So your job, your dbt job itself is going to take a bit longer because you have more things to monitor and to log for elementary than just the few models that we have created. Our user interface layer is then going to be able to access this. So let's quickly configure ourselves the user interface. Okay, go to elementary-data.com, use the try Cloud Now button. Also, you can access the docs from here, where you can also here select the quick start guide, where you're also again going to see what I've just shown in dbt for the project. Once you have a user, once you're in there, you can then go and you can connect environments. So you create an environment, and as you can see here, you can use Snowflake with elementary, Redshift, BigQuery, Databricks, and also Postgres if you want. So very versatile. You can do a lot of things with it. I used here Snowflake, then added my account ID, the database name, which was testdb, the warehouse, which I call small warehouse, the schema for elementary, which I call elementary, and my user role with username and password that we created. Then you set this up and it's going to configure it. It takes 1-2 minutes until everything is configured, and then you can go to your dashboard and you see your dashboard. All right, so the dashboard of elementary is pretty clean. You have here your latest test results. As you can see, we had one error here in 5 tests. Table health, we see table health. Okay, one failed actually. And also on the right here, we see that we have monitored tables where 3 tables are actually not monitored. That's because in my project that I created, I don't do tests for every table. And it automatically sees this and tells us this. So we know, oh, we are missing something here. And of course, if we're doing freshness tests and so on, or if we would have schema changes, we would see this here as well. And then we have some charts here. Basically the same thing, just with the 7-day trend, so we can see actually what's going on. So then what do we have? We can see here the test results. These are the latest results that we see. You can also go here on the left and you can select individual models. Like the invoice model here, and then you see, okay, what are we testing? And the last one here was a fault from a unique, where we can see, okay, we have here a unique field that is actually failing, and we see how many records this field has. Below here, we see the description. We see our query that is going to run in Snowflake. Pretty cool. We can also click here, test runs, and then we see how often is this test running and how often are these failing. You can also go here, test management. We don't have any table tests, but we have the column tests, so you can see here. And if you have connected your GitHub to elementary, you can actually then create tests from here. So pretty cool. Model runs we see. So this way you can see, do I have some issue here with my time, how long the execution takes, right? So we see this dimensions invoices. The last one was 2.5, the median is 1.9. So execution time is going up. You can also click on this and then you see here the graph that shows you, okay, yeah, it's going up. And also we have one here and it shows you a trend line here. So pretty cool. We also have a data catalog feature that allows you to go into your models and then look into what's actually going on. You see the configured tests, you can see the columns that you use and the actual column types. You can see when the model last run and with status. And if you created a good DBT description, then you will see it here. From here, you can see then the dependencies, upstream and downstream dependencies, and you can even look into the SQL query. If you click on DBT tests here, you can then immediately see which test failed here, the invoice number unique test failed. So you jump directly into the test results. Let's go back. Now in this, we know this had a failure in the DBT test. So let's look at the lineage. You have the lineage tab here, and this directly gets you into the lineage. So you see end to end, what is the impact of this? So we have a problem here with our invoices table. We can see that the RFM table and the OWT table here are actually impacted by this. Now, you can, with the lineage tool, do even more if you're going, let's go here into the dimensions where we see more tables. Let's look at the items table. In the items table, we have our quantity, and then you can explore, okay, where does the quantity come from our data table, and where does it actually go? You can see here into our OWT quantity. So this way you see the actual impact of this. And if you're not sure, you can actually find out the complete lineage of your data. Like if you're on the right side here, you have your OWT and you wonder, where does this actually come from? You can click here on the country and then you see, okay, that comes out of the invoices table and that gets the data from the data table. Of course, this is just with a few tables, but I think you get the idea. Let's talk about alarms. Now, one thing that I haven't shown here is alarms, right? Because we have the user interface here. How do we get alarms? How we get alarms is through a connection to Slack. So you can go here, you can go into your account settings, and in our environment, you can actually connect to Slack and insert the Slack token here. And then your alarms will be sent to Slack and whoever is on Slack will get the messages. You can also connect a BI tool here so that you have a end-to-end lineage. You have the lineage from the source data to the transformations and the models basically to the reports that somebody creates. So you see in the lineage the complete impact of an error. And again, if you want to do on-the-fly tests, you can use the code repository or connect it here. Now, one thing that I don't like a lot here, but that's a problem because I have the poor man's version of DBT Cloud. This updates once an hour. So the elementary user interface is going to update once an hour. The way around this is that you don't do hourly, you do this per webhook. Now the problem is with the webhook, if you use DBT Cloud, you need a paid version of DBT Cloud. And I have the poor man's version, the free version, and then this doesn't work. So, but there's a way around. If you have Airflow and or Perfect, you can actually then trigger this webhook so the data will be updated immediately. It's just I don't have that, so I need to wait for an hour for this to update. For me, this could have also been like 10 minutes or so, not hourly, but it is what it is. So as you can see, pretty clean interface, shows you everything that you need. It's not overloaded. And it shows you a lot more than just, for instance, with DBT Cloud. So let's look at the demo one, because they have set up one with a bit more information. And let's just click through this. All right, so here's a prepared dashboard. As you can see, immediately a lot more information. You have here the tests, 23, 9 errors, 5 warnings, table health, you can see. And these for the latest ones, right? Monitor tables. You can see here, freshness is good. Volume, actually 3 errors. Schema changes, we have a schema change in there. dbt tests, 5 failures and anomalies. And then you can scroll down here and you see, okay, again, an overview of this. So let's look at the schema change. We have the schema change error here. Click on it, then it will get us to test results. And then you can actually open this up and you see here schema change. The type of order ID was changed from number to text. Boom. Wow. Awesome. You can also look at anomalies. You can look at the tests themselves, but let's just go here, test results, and look at the row count. For instance, row count was failure here. Then you see, and you can immediately see, okay, what's going on here? This is a straight line, but then here it actually went up. And this gray area here, that's basically the anomaly threshold that it sets. So because it learns, this will get closer. You get some more information. Like here, it says last row count value is 435,000. The average is 136. So something is going on here. The lineage is very interesting. Of course, this is a lot bigger than the lineage I had in my program. But you can see your staging state, customers, and you can see the ordered ones. And these are actually reports that somebody created. You can click on this and then you can see here exposure on the bottom. Exposure, type dashboard, URL, view in Tableau. So you could, if you have access to the Tableau, you could immediately click on this. And then you can see, okay, we have errors here. What's happening? What is actually impacted by these errors? Because it's not just the models, it's also the reports that somebody created. So you have basically an end-to-end lineage from the data through the transformations onto the reports. Pretty cool. Okay, let's look at the summary. Okay, so what's the verdict? Let's look at the pros and the cons. From the pro side, it's very easy to implement. You only do a few things on the dbt side and you only do a few things on the data warehouse side. If it's Databricks or Snowflake, doesn't really matter. It has a lot of connections that are available. The tests, you don't need to configure, especially for elementary. It's using everything that you already created for your dbt jobs. Native implementation of tests is super important, and I really like this. Also the out-of-box option of having anomaly detection and of having detection of schema changes. Super cool. I like that the UI isn't overloaded. Sometimes you have monitoring or observability solutions that have tens of thousands of pages and super overloaded. This is very clean, very straightforward. I like that. I also like the privacy aspect a lot because the data is stored in your data warehouse. I could see everything that Elementary stored in my Snowflake. It only has access to that data. To my other data, which is private data, which has maybe customer information, has no access to that. That's very good, especially thinking of larger companies and so on. Very important. So everything fine. I think that Elementary will help a lot of people. On the con side, when you run your dbt job, there are more models to actually run, right? So it's going to slow down your whole job execution. I think for me, because I was running a very small warehouse, this was a bit of an issue. And if you're running a more powerful warehouse, this is not going to be that much of a thing. But you have to keep that in mind. That is something. Another thing that people maybe don't like is that you can't edit the dashboard. Sometimes you might want to look at something specific and want to have this on your dashboard, like one model that is always failing and or one column, and you want to actually keep that test inside of for everyone. But that's only a small thing. The job updates that I showed you on the user interface of the cloud once an hour if you only have dbt cloud and if you don't use Airflow and so on. Can be a bit annoying, should be, in my opinion, should be a bit lower, but not a big deal. I'm usually, if you run this in production, you will have a paid dbt cloud account or you will run dbt through Airflow or through Perfect or something. So it's not that huge of a con. Also, one thing to keep in mind, and I count this as a con, but it's completely normal. If you run the open source version that is not in the cloud, you don't have the column lineage function where you can look at that, and you can't connect to BI tools, so you don't have an end-to-end lineage. And there are a few other things that are missing from the open source version, but it's not that huge of a deal. So overall, great solution, great tool, very easy to install. I think this will help a lot of people in their daily work as an engineer. So check it out. Link is below in the description. And then see you in the next video.